I want to start today with a scenario. It's a hypothetical, but I think,
Yeah.
everyone listening has been in a version of this situation at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tuesday morning. You wake up, the alarm goes off, and you realize immediately that something is just wrong.
Oh, yeah.
You have a splitting headache, the kind that sits right behind your eyes and just throbs every time you move your head.
The worst way to start the day. The absolute worst.
Right. So you shuffle into the bathroom, you open the medicine cabinet, and you are faced with a choice.
Okay.
You have two bottles sitting on the shelf. Bottle A is the generic stuff. You bought it at the wholesale club in a plastic jar the size of a football.
Right. The giant one.
It contains 500 pills, and I think it cost you about $5.
It is.
It is, for all intents and purposes, a penny a pill.
It's the efficient choice.
Yeah.
The economic choice.
Then you have bottle B. This is the brand name. It's in a shiny silver box with a holographic seal that kind of catches the light.
Mm.
Maybe it says rapid release or migraine strength in these bold red letters. And this little bottle cost you $15 for 20 pills.
Wow.
That's 75 cents a pop. Now, you're a smart person. You turn the bottles over. You look at the active ingredients. Bottle A, 200 milligrams of ibuprofen. Bottle B, 200 milligrams of ibuprofen.
They're identical. I mean, if you ground them up and put them under a mass spectrometer, you wouldn't be able to tell which pile of white dust came from which bottle.
Exactly. So here is the question to kick off this deep dive. You take the cheap penny pill. Your partner takes the shiny 75-cent pill. Who feels better faster?
Well, if we look at this through the lens of pure logic, if we assume the human body is just a biological machine, like a car engine, the answer has to be that you both feel exactly the same relief at exactly the same time.
Sure.
The stomach acid dissolves the pill, the molecule enters the bloodstream, it binds to the enzymes causing inflammation, and the pain stops.
Yeah.
The price tag on the box doesn't enter the bloodstream. The holographic sticker doesn't bind to your pain receptors.
That is the rational answer. That's the answer I want to be true because I hate spending money on brand names.
You do.
But the stack of research we have on the table today, and it is a massive stack, suggests that the rational answer is completely, totally wrong.
It is wrong. And that is what is so unsettling and frankly so exciting about the material we are covering today. We were looking at a collection of studies ranging from behavioral economics to neurosurgery, and they all point to one inescapable conclusion.
Which is
The theater of the medicine, the price, the packaging, the confidence of the doctor, the rituals surrounding the care matters just as much, and in some cases more, than the chemical or the surgery itself.
the theater of medicine. I really like that phrase. It implies that we are an audience, not just patients.
Okay.
We are watching a performance, and that performance changes our biology.
We are absolutely an audience, but we are also active participants. The mission for this deep dive is to understand the physiological power of expectation. And I want to be very clear right off the bat, we aren't talking about positive thinking in a vague self-help way. We aren't talking about manifesting your reality.
Right. We aren't saying just smile and the cancer goes away.
No.
We are looking at hard data. We have fMRI brain scans. We have scores from objective puzzle tests. And we have results from actual surgical procedures.
We're going to see how your brain constructs reality based on what it predicts is about to happen. And the punchline is going to be a little hard to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes paying more for something actually does make it work better, purely because you paid more.
It's a bit mind-bending. We're going to cover a lot of ground today.
Hmm.
We're going to start with a classic corporate war, Coke versus Pepsi.
A classic.
Then we'll move into how stereotypes can actually change your physical walking speed, which is just bizarre.
Yeah, that one's wild.
We've got a segment on fake surgeries that is honestly one of the wildest things I've ever read, and we'll wrap up with that aspirin question. Does money make medicine work?
It's a fascinating roadmap. It challenges the fundamental idea that we are objective observers of the world. We aren't. We are active creators of our experience.
So let's unpack this, and let's start with the brown bubbly stuff. The most famous rivalry in the history of capitalism. Coca-Cola versus Pepsi.
The clash of the titans.
Now, most people have a preference. I know I do. If I'm at a restaurant and I ask for a Coke and the server says, "Is Pepsi okay?" there is a microsecond of disappointment.
Oh yeah, you feel it.
I feel like I can taste a massive difference.
You are not alone. People are incredibly tribal about this.
Yeah.
But biologically,
Mm-hmm.
chemically, these two drinks are incredibly similar.
They're pretty much the same thing, right?
They're both carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, caramel color, phosphoric acid, and caffeine. In blind taste tests, where you just have two unmarked cups, People struggle to tell them apart.
I've heard that.
In fact, historically in drying tests, Pepsi often wins because it's slightly sweeter.
And yet, Coke dominates the market. So a researcher named Sam McClure and his colleagues decided to look at this phenomenon. But they didn't just do a taste test in a mall with a clipboard.
No, they went deeper.
They decided to look at it inside the human brain.
They used an fMRI machine, functional magnetic resonance imaging.
Just to set the scene for you, because the setup here is important to the results. An fMRI isn't like a heart monitor you just strap on.
Not at all. It's a massive room-sized magnet. You have to lie on a table that slides into a very narrow tube. It's loud. It clangs and bangs.
Super claustrophobic, I'd imagine.
Very. And you have to lie perfectly, absolutely still, because the machine is mapping the blood flow in your brain to see which areas are active in real time.
So usually you can't eat or drink in an fMRI because you'd move your head.
Exactly. So to do a taste test, they had to engineer a special delivery system.
What'd they do?
They ran long plastic tubes from pumps outside the room through the magnet and taped them directly into the participants' mouths.
So picture this. You're strapped into a dark, loud tube, you can't move, and you have a plastic straw taped to your lips.
Right. And from a distance, the researchers would squirt small amounts of liquid into your mouth. Sometimes it was Coke, sometimes it was Pepsi. Now, here is the variable that matters.
Okay.
Sometimes the participant knew what was coming, and sometimes they didn't.
Ah, so they are measuring the brain's reaction to the liquid itself versus the brain's reaction to the idea of the liquid.
Precisely. Let's look at the first condition, the blind taste test. The participant sees a neutral light flash, maybe a yellow circle, and then they get a squirt of brown sugar water. They don't know if it's Coke or Pepsi.
And what did the brain scans show?
When the brain was hidden, the brain reaction was effectively identical for both drinks.
Really? No difference at all.
None. The area that lit up was the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or the VMPFC.
That's a mouthful. Let's break that down. What is the VMPFC responsible for?
You can think of the VMPFC as the brain's yum center. It is associated with basic hedonic value.
So it just answers the question, is this nice?
Exactly. Is this pleasant right now? It reacts to the immediate sensory pleasure of sugar on the tongue.
Okay, so blind test, sugar hits tongue, VMPFC says yum, Coke and Pepsi are tied.
Right. If we stop the experiment there, we would say there is no difference.
Yeah.
But then
they turn on the branding.
they turn on the brand cues. The theater begins.
Right.
Exactly. They told the participants, okay, this next squirt is Coca-Cola. And they show them a visual cue, a picture of the red Coke can.
And the brain maps changed.
Drastically.
Yeah.
When people knew they were drinking Coke, the VMPFC was still active. It was still sweet, after all.
Sure.
But suddenly, another area joined the party. The DLPFC.
The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
You've been practicing. Yes, the DLPFC.
I have.
This is a very different neighborhood in the brain. It's not about sensory pleasure. It handles higher human brain functions.
Sure.
We're talking about working memory, associations, complex ideas, and cognition. It's where you store concepts.
So wait, when I drink Coke, and I know it's Coke, my brain isn't just processing sweet taste, it's processing memories.
It's processing the brand. It's processing the red can, the swirling white script, the commercials with the polar bears.
No, I'd like to teach the world to sing.
That's it. The memories of pizza parties as a kid. All of those associations are stored in that frontal part of the brain. And here's the kicker. There's a dopamine link that connects that higher brain area back to the pleasure center.
So the idea of the brand is physically triggering more pleasure.
Yes. The associations, the story of Coke, actually enhanced the activity in the pleasure center. The participants literally, physically, enjoyed the drink more because they knew it was Coke.
So the neural signal for enjoyment was stronger.
It was stronger. It's wild.
That is wild. It means we aren't just drinking a beverage, we are consuming a concept.
We are consuming a story.
Yeah.
The ad agencies are right. When they sell you a lifestyle, when they spend billions on branding, they aren't just trying to trick you into grabbing the can off the shelf.
Right.
They're actually engineering the product to taste better to you by implanting those associations in your DLPFC.
So the red paint on the can is an active ingredient.
In a neurological sense, yes. It absolutely is. The packaging is part of the flavor profile. If you pour the greatest wine in the world into a plastic sippy cup, it would taste worse to your brain than if it were in a crystal goblet. The goblet is part of the taste.
That is slightly disturbing, but also fascinating. It shows that our expectations, I expect this to be good because it's Cope, actually altered the sensory data processing.
And this mechanism doesn't stop at soft drinks. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If expectations can change how something tastes, which is a very basic primal sense, can they change how we perform? Can they change who we are in a specific moment?
This brings us to the next section of the research. Stereotypes.
Stereotypes are heavy baggage. We usually talk about them in a sociological sense: prejudice, bias, social harm. And those are very real and very important conversations.
Absolutely.
But in the context of this deep dive, we need to look at stereotypes as brain shortcuts.
Right. The source material makes this point. The brain is lazy or efficient, depending on how charitable you want to be.
It has to be efficient.
Yeah.
The world is flooded with data. I mean, if you walked into a room and had to analyze every single object in person from scratch, what is that four-legged wooden object? Can it support my mass? What is the intent of that person? You'd collapse from exhaustion in 5 minutes.
You'd never get anywhere.
So the brain categorizes. It predicts. That is a chair. I can sit. That is a fire. It is hot. That is an elderly person. They might walk slowly.
That is a professor. They are probably smart.
Exactly. These are predictive models. We use them to navigate the world. The problem arises because these predictive models, or stereotypes, don't just influence how we judge others. They influence how we judge ourselves. They can prime our behavior.
There is this study involving Asian American women that perfectly illustrates this. It's almost like a magic trick, but it's just psychology.
This is the experiment by Margaret Shin, Todd Patinsky, and Nalini Ambati. It's brilliant in its simplicity.
Okay.
They took a group of Asian American women. Now think about the cultural stereotypes these women live with. They sit at the intersection of two powerful, conflicting ideas regarding math.
Right. Stereotype A. Asians are naturally good at math. And stereotype B. Women are naturally bad at math.
Exactly. Both are cultural constructs. They aren't biological facts. But they are embedded in the culture these women live in. They know these stereotypes exist. So the researchers wanted to see if they could toggle these identities like a light switch.
How do they do that?
So they have these women take an objective, difficult math exam. But before the test, they split them into two groups.
Okay.
Group 1 gets the gender prime. The researchers ask them to fill out a questionnaire. But the questions are specific. They ask about their opinions on co-ed dorms, living arrangements, questions that subtly but clearly remind them, hey, you are a woman.
And group 2?
Group 2 gets the race prime. They are asked about the languages they speak at home, their family history, how many generations their family's been in the country, questions that remind them, hey, you are Asian American.
So it's the same women, same math ability, same education, just a different questionnaire 5 minutes before the test.
And a different result. The group primed with their Asian identity performed significantly better on the math test than the group primed with their female identity.
That is incredible. Their cognitive ability, their raw horsepower to solve math problems, fluctuated based entirely on which label was active in their heads at that moment.
It's the self-fulfilling prophecy in real time. The brain accesses the stereotype. Asians are good at math. And it effectively says, okay, we're in good at math mode.
Right.
It marshals the resources. It focuses. Conversely, when the women are bad at math, stereotype is active, the anxiety or the subconscious expectation of failure actually inhibits performance.
It's not just about ability, it's about accessibility of that ability.
Precisely. And this priming effect can happen even when the stereotype isn't about you. It can happen just by being exposed to words in your environment.
This is the rude versus polite study, right?
Yeah.
This one made me laugh because it feels so relatable to anyone who has dealt with bureaucracy.
This comes from John Barg, a legend in this field.
Yeah.
He had participants do a scrambled sentence task.
Okay.
Basically, you get a list of words like he, find it instantly, and you had to unscramble them to make a sentence. It seems like a simple language test to the participant.
But the words themselves were the weapon.
Correct. Group A got words associated with rudeness, aggressive, intrude, annoying, brazen. Group B got words associated with politeness, honor, sensitive, respect, patient.
So they do this word puzzle for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. They are primed. Then what?
Then they are told to go to a second laboratory down the hall for the next part of the experiment. But when they get there, the experimenter's busy. He's standing there talking to another participant who is actually a fake participant, a confederate of the study. And they are just chatting, ignoring the person who just arrived.
The classic nightmare. You're waiting, and the guy in charge is ignoring you to talk about.
It's about these random stuff, the weekend,
Yeah.
the weather, The experimenter is being deliberately rude by ignoring the new arrival. The question is, how long does the participant wait before they interrupt and say, hey, I'm here?
And the people who unscrambled the rude words.
They interrupted, on average, after 5.5 minutes. They marched in and demanded attention.
And the polite group.
They waited 9.3 minutes.
Whoa.
But here's the crazy part. Most of the polite group never interrupted. The researchers had to cut the experiment off at the 10-minute mark because the participants were just standing there patiently waiting.
That is almost double the waiting time just because they read the word honor or sensitive a few minutes earlier.
It shows that we are highly suggestible. The environment feeds us cues, and we act on them without even realizing it.
Wow.
We think we are making a conscious choice to be polite or rude, but our brain is just following the script it was just handed. The most famous version of this, and perhaps the most visual, is the Florida study.
Oh, right, the walking speed study. This one is famous for a reason.
Same setup, scrambled sentences, but this time the words were things like Florida, bingo, ancient, gray, wrinkle.
Right, words associated with the elderly.
Exactly.
Now, the participants were NYU undergrads, young, healthy, full of energy. They're 19 or 20 years old.
Young and healthy.
Yeah.
But after unscrambling those words, the researchers covertly timed how long it took them to walk down the hallway leaving the building. They had hidden stopwatches. They walked significantly slower.
Get out.
I'm serious. They physically slowed down. They weren't old. They didn't feel old. They didn't consciously think, I should walk like my grandpa. But the concept of old age was active in their neural pathways, and that concept includes slow movement. So the motor cortex, the part of the brain that controls your legs, adjusted the speed to match the active concept.
They were walking at the speed of their expectations.
That is a great way to put it. We walk at the speed of our expectations. We solve math problems at the level of our expectations. And, as we're about to see, we heal at the level of our expectations.
This is the perfect segue to the most high-stakes portion of our deep dive. Walking slowly is one thing. Being polite is one thing. But undergoing heart surgery, that is life or death.
This is where the rubber meets the road, or perhaps where the scalpel meets the skin. We need to talk about the ultimate placebo, fake surgery.
It sounds illegal, it sounds like something you'd get arrested for.
In a modern context, doing this without consent would be highly unethical. But in the history of medicine, this has been a crucial, if controversial, way to find out what actually works. Let's go back to the 1950s.
Okay, picture it. 1950s medicine.
There was a very popular procedure for angina. Angina is severe chest pain caused by poor blood flow to the heart. It's debilitating. The procedure was called internal mammary artery ligation.
Sounds technical and impressive.
It does. The theory was that if you tied off this specific artery in the chest, it would force blood to flow through other pathways, increasing pressure to the heart muscle and relieving the pain.
Okay.
It had been done for 20 years. Doctors swore by it. Patients said it saved their lives. They would have the surgery and say, I can walk up the stairs without pain now.
I'm a new man.
Exactly. But there was a cardiologist in Seattle named Dr. Leonard Cobb who was skeptical. He looked at the anatomy and thought, this doesn't actually make sense. The plumbing doesn't work that way. Tying this artery shouldn't help the heart.
So he decided to run a test. Very bold test.
He found patients who needed the surgery. Half of them got the real deal. Chest opened, artery exposed, artery tied off. The other half got a placebo surgery.
Walk us through a placebo surgery. What does that look like?
The patient is anesthetized. They are asleep. They are in the operating room. The surgeon makes the incisions on the chest. He cuts the skin so there will be scars.
Okay.
But then he does nothing. He just waits for the amount of time the surgery would take, maybe chats with the nurses, and then he sews them back up.
So they wake up with bandages, stitches, and the pain of the incision. They think they've had the operation.
They believe it 100%. And the result was shocking. Both groups reported immediate relief.
Both groups.
Both groups. The relief lasted about 3 months for everyone. The patients who had the fake surgery reported just as much improvement as the ones who had their arteries tied.
Wow.
And when they looked at the EKGs, the actual electrical activity of the heart, there was no difference. The real surgery was medically useless. It didn't improve blood flow at all.
But the patients felt better.
They felt better because they expected to feel better. The ritual of the surgery, the anesthesia, the scars, the recovery room, the doctor saying it went well, triggered a physiological response that relieved the pain.
You might think, okay, that was the 50s. We know better now. But there's a much more recent example involving knee surgery that really blows my mind.
Yes, this is the Moseley study from 2002. This one shook the orthopedic world. It involved arthroscopic surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee.
A procedure that costs thousands of dollars.
Billions are spent on it annually. It's one of the most common surgeries in America.
Right.
Dr. J.B. Moseley decided to test it. He had 3 groups. Group 1, standard surgery, scraping out the cartilage and washing the knee. Group 2, just washing the knee out, no scraping. Group 3, placebo.
Again, the fake surgery.
Simulated surgery. He made the incisions. He splashed water around so it sounded like washing. He manipulated the knee as if he were working.
But no tools inside.
But he put no instruments inside the joint. He didn't touch the cartilage.
And the result?
They tracked these patients for 2 years. Not just 3 months, 2 years.
Okay.
The placebo group reported the same pain relief and the same improvement in walking ability as the people who had the cartilage scraped and washed.
2 years of relief from a surgery that never happened. That implies that for 2 years, their bodies maintained a state of healing based solely on a false belief.
Dr. Nelda Ray, one of the authors, basically said, look, we're spending $1 billion a year on this, and it works no better than a placebo.
The surgeons must have been furious.
Well, they were. They tried to discredit the study. They were embarrassed because no surgeon wants to believe that their skill is irrelevant.
Of course not.
They want to believe they are mechanics fixing the machine. But in this case, the theater of the surgery, the hospital, the scrub nurse, the anesthesia, was doing the heavy lifting, not the scraping of the cartilage.
It really forces us to ask, what is a cure? If the fake surgery stops the pain for 2 years, is it a fake cure? Or is it a real cure triggered by a fake cause?
That is the philosophical rabbit hole of the placebo effect. And to understand it, we have to look at the history. Because for most of human history, all medicine was placebo.
Right. We didn't have antibiotics or beta blockers. We had weirder stuff.
Much weirder. The source mentions an Italian physician in 1794 named Gerbi. He discovered that if you rubbed the secretions of a certain worm on an aching tooth, the pain went away for a year.
Worm secretions.
Specifically, he crushed the worms between his thumb and forefinger and then touched the tooth.
You're kidding me.
He kept meticulous records. 68% of his patients were cured.
And then there's the mummy powder.
Yes. Ground up Egyptian mummies. It was a standard treatment for everything from epilepsy to ulcers. You could order genuine Egyptian mummy from the Merck catalog as late as 1908.
1908? That is not that long ago. My great-grandparents were alive then.
And it worked often enough that people kept buying it. It worked because of suggestion.
So let's break down the mechanism here. Why does rubbing a worm on your tooth stop the pain? It's not magic, it's biology.
It boils down to 2 main mechanisms: belief and conditioning.
Okay, let's take belief first. This is the conscious part.
Belief is the conscious confidence in the doctor or the drug. When you walk into a hospital, you are surrounded by symbols of authority and healing. The white coat, the stethoscope, the smell of antiseptic. Yeah. Your brain says, I am in the place where healing happens. This reduces stress hormones, like cortisol, which we know exacerbate pain and can trigger the release of endorphins.
Endorphins are the body's natural painkillers.
Exactly. They are opiates. They bind to the same receptors as morphine. So your brain can literally drug itself if it believes relief is coming.
And the second mechanism is conditioning. This is the Pavlov stuff.
Right. Pavlov's dogs. You ring a bell, you feed the dog. Eventually you ring the bell and the dog salivates even if there is no food. The body learns the pattern.
So if I take an aspirin every time I have a headache, my body learns white pill equals pain relief.
Correct. So eventually, the moment you swallow the pill before it even dissolves, your body might start releasing those pain relief chemicals because it recognizes the ritual.
There is that story about the burn ward in the Sources.
Yes. The author mentions lying in a burn ward in terrible pain. And he says that just seeing the nurse approach with the needle before she even touched him caused a wave of relief.
Wow.
His brain anticipated the morphine and released its own supply of opioids to bridge the gap.
It's amazing. The brain is constantly predicting the future and adjusting our physiology to meet it.
But here's where it gets really interesting for our modern world. We aren't using worm secretions anymore. We're using highly engineered pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And one of the biggest signals of quality we have today is not the smell of the worm, it's the price tag.
The price tag. This brings us to the Velodone experiment. This is one of my favorite studies in the stack because of how elaborate the setup was. They basically built a movie set.
This was conducted by Dan Ariely and his colleagues at MIT. They wanted to test if the price of a drug changes its effectiveness. So they created a fake drug called Velladone RX.
Velladone RX. Sounds serious. Sounds potent.
It was a capsule of vitamin C.
Of course it was.
But the participants didn't know that. They arrived at the MIT Media Lab, which had been dressed up to look like a medical waiting room.
How so?
They had old copies of Time and Newsweek on the tables. They had medical charts.
Nice touch with the magazines. Nothing says doctor's office, like a Newsweek from 3 years ago.
And they meet a representative from Vel Pharmaceuticals named Ariely.
Ariely.
She was wearing a business suit, had a faint Russian accent, and looked very professional. She gave him a glossy brochure about Velladone. It claimed to be a new opioid, extremely effective, with 92% of patients reporting relief in clinical trials.
They are really selling the theater here.
Totally. Now, the participants have to undergo a pain test, electrical shocks to the wrist.
Ouch!
They get shocked, and they rate the pain. Then, they are given the Velladone pill. They're told to wait 15 minutes for it to kick in. Then they get shocked again.
And naturally, because of the placebo effect.
They felt less pain. Almost all of them reported significant pain relief after taking the vitamin C. That's the baseline placebo effect.
But then comes the twist, the price.
Right. They ran the experiment in 2 scenarios. In scenario A, the brochure said the drug cost $2.50 per pill.
Which implies it's a premium, strong medication that's expensive for a single pill.
In scenario B, the brochure was identical, but someone had crossed out the $2.50 price and written in a discount price of 10 to nonce.
10 cents, so now it's bargain bin medication.
Same vitamin C, same Russian rep, same shocks. But the result was different.
What happened?
When the pill was $2.50, almost everyone felt pain relief. When the pill was 10 cents, only half the people felt relief.
Wow, so simply knowing it was cheap turned off the body's natural pain-killing response for half the group.
It broke the spell. The expectation of quality is tied to cost. We believe that you get what you pay for. So if you pay pennies, you expect a weak result, and your body delivers a weak result.
And the study notes that this was even stronger for people who had recent experience with pain, right?
Yes. People who relied on pain meds in their daily lives were even more negatively affected by the discount. They subconsciously believed the cheap stuff wouldn't work. Their conditioning was, good drugs are expensive. So the 10-cent price tag was a huge red flag for their brains.
This isn't just a lab trick either. They found the same thing with cold medicine in the real world.
University of Iowa study. They surveyed students about their cold medicine. The students who bought the full price, brand name meds, reported significantly better outcomes than the students who bought the discount generic versions.
Even though, chemically, they are usually identical.
Identical.
So if I buy the generic aspirin to save money, I might actually be robbing myself of some pain relief.
You might be. If you have a deep-seated belief that cheap equals bad, the generic might genuinely be less effective for you physiologically. The savings in your wallet comes at a cost to your biology.
That is disturbing. It suggests that medical insurance companies, by pushing us toward generics, might be inadvertently lowering the efficacy of the treatment for some people.
It's a valid hypothesis. The theater of high cost is a functional part of the treatment. The high price signals potency to the brain, and the brain releases the endorphins to match that potency.
Okay, so price affects pain, but surely it can't affect something as objective as intelligence. Pain is subjective. Being smart solving puzzles, that's objective. You either get the answer right or you don't.
You would think so. But let's talk about Sobe.
The energy drink. The one with the lizards in the bottle.
The very same. Sobe Adrenaline Rush. It comes in a cool bottle, claims superior functionality and energy for your mind.
I've had it. It's got a lot of caffeine. It definitely wakes you up.
So the researchers went to a gym. They sold Sobe to students. Some paid full price. Some got a discount price, about a third of the cost.
Yeah, and they asked them how they felt.
First, yes.
Yeah.
Subjectively, the people who paid full price said they felt more refreshed and less fatigued than the people who got the discount drink.
Even though it was the same drink.
Same exact drink.
Okay, that's the feeling part again. But you mentioned puzzles.
Right. They took another group of students. They gave them the Soba again, half paid full price, half paid discount. Then they sat them down to solve anagram puzzles.
Anagrams like rearranging letters.
Exactly, like TUPPIL becomes PLOP. They had 30 minutes to solve 15 of these.
What was the baseline? How many does a normal person get right without any drink?
The baseline group with no drink got about 9 out of 15 correct.
Okay. And the full price Sobe group?
They also got 9 out of 15. So statistically, the Sobe didn't actually make them smarter.
Right.
The caffeine didn't turn them into geniuses.
But the discount group.
The discount group averaged 6.5 out of 15.
Oh, they got worse.
They performed 28% worse than the people who paid full price.
Wait, let's unpack this. They drank the same caffeine, they had the same sugar, but because they knew they bought it cheap, they became dumber.
In a way, yes. The knowledge that they were consuming a cheap product acted as a psychological dampener. This is sometimes called the nocebo effect. It inhibited their cognitive performance. They unconsciously thought, this stuff is cheap, it probably won't work, maybe it's subpar. And that lack of confidence translated into a lack of focus or persistence on the puzzles.
That is frightening. It's not just that the placebo adds a bonus, it's that the negative expectation can actively subtract from your ability.
Exactly. The discount price created a nocebo effect. It sabotaged them. But here is the really fun part. They did a follow-up where they added a hype variable.
Hype?
They printed a fake cover on the quiz booklet. It said, scientific studies have shown that Sobe improves mental functioning, and referenced 50 scientific studies.
So they ramped up the expectation. They laid it on thick.
It ramped it way up.
Yeah.
And when they did that, the discount group improved a little bit, but the full price group,
Yeah.
they jumped up to solving 3.3 more questions than baseline.
So when you combined high price plus high hype, people actually did get smarter.
Yes. The combination of paying a lot and being told this works pushed their performance beyond their natural baseline. The expectation created a reality where they could focus better and solve more puzzles.
It's like Dumbo's magic feather.
It is exactly Dumbo's magic feather. But Dumbo really did fly. And these students really did solve more puzzles. The feather works.
So what does this all mean for us? We've covered a lot. Coke tastes better because it's Coke. Asian American women do better at math when they think about being Asian. Fake surgery cures knees. Expensive pills stop pain better than cheap ones.
It means that we need to fundamentally rethink our relationship with truth and reality. We like to think that we perceive the world as it is, but we don't. We perceive the world as we expect it to be. Our brain is constantly filtering, enhancing, or dampening the signal based on our beliefs.
And this applies to everything. The source material briefly touches on conflict like Israel and Palestine.
It's a heavy comparison, but it fits. The text mentions football fans watching a game. Both sides see the exact same play. One side sees the ball in bounds, the other sees it out of bounds.
Right.
They aren't lying. They literally see it that way because of their team affiliation.
And in a conflict zone, that bias is 1,000 times stronger.
Exactly. If you expect the other side to be aggressive, you will interpret a neutral action as aggressive. You will see what your team primes you to see.
So what's the solution?
The source suggests that the only way to find truth in those situations is, like the Coke-Pepsi test, to go blind.
Remove the labels.
Remove the labels. Have a neutral third party assess the facts without knowing who did what. Because as long as we know which brand is acting, our brains will distort the reality to fit our bias.
It's a powerful lesson. We are all walking around with these lenses on.
We are. And we can't just take them off. We can be aware that they are there.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought that has been nagging me since we discussed the Velodone study.
Go for it.
We proved, or rather the scientists proved, that the $2 for 50-cent pill works better than the 10-cent pill, even if they are identical.
Right.
The high price is a medical utility. It creates the belief that heals.
Correct.
So should insurance companies charge us more?
That is the provocative question.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
If the goal of medicine is to make me better and paying a high copay makes me feel better than a free prescription, is the deception of high price actually a good thing? Should we be grateful for expensive drugs because the price tag is part of the cure?
It's an ethical minefield.
Yeah.
Is it ethical to rip someone off if getting ripped off makes them healthy? I don't have the answer. But based on the data we've seen today, I can tell you one thing. If you go buy that aspirin tonight, maybe treat yourself to the shiny box. It might just work a little better.
On that note, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.